Yeah, really, again, like to welcome everybody to the official beginning of training camp. We had our 5-day ramp-up period with the practices on the south side, and to be able to come over to Heinz Field and get into this environment again, it rekindles the excitement of starting another year. The one thing that we really want to think about and talk about a little bit, it's an unusual year. It's an exciting year for the organization from the Hall of Fame standpoint. It's a unique class of 5 individuals who really defined a lot of this organization's standards that we're very honored to be welcoming into the Hall of Fame, or as they move into the Hall of Fame, of course, the great Bill Nunn, Coach Cowher, Troy Polamalu, Alan Faneca, and the great Donnie Shell. It's an exciting time. You know, we get to play in that game against the Cowboys, who also have a few people going in, and of course the ceremony's that Saturday. So we're really looking forward to that. And it rekindles a lot of, like I said, coming into camp, you get excited, then you think about those players and what they did, and Coach Cowher, for myself, and you know, of course, the great Bill Nunn, and us being able to work together. Didn't overlap with Donnie Shell, but obviously know of his greatness. And again, just want to mention that first and foremost. We're excited, really beyond belief. We keep talking about it, but I think it's really going to be a special moment on that Saturday. So, questions?
Kevin, were you aware of the extent of the Castro's injury before you reported? And have you been working on a contingency plan?
Yeah, when David showed up, you know, he had an ankle problem that was bothering him. We had it looked at. You know, we decided that we were going to move on, and it takes nothing away from what David did for us in his time here. But you know, his availability was something that we couldn't determine at that point, and you know, we decided we had to move on. And you know, David's will do what he needs to do, and whether he continues to play, that'll be his decision. But when a guy like Trey Turner was available to us and we could afford him under our salary cap, we decided to make that move. And it takes nothing away from what David did for us in his 9 seasons with us, but you know, we have to be ready for 2021.
Kevin, when we talked to Ben, he said he's not thinking about whether or not this is his last year, but looking at the way that you guys structured his contract, the reworking of it, are you guys operating under the idea that this is his last season? He'll be making some kind of change to the franchise quarterback situation beginning in the 22 season?
Again, 2021 is all we're worried about with Ben. To go back on what he did for us back in the spring by taking a restructuring of his contract, it was done with really 2 purposes. The first, that being his being able to be here, and then also allowing us to do some things financially and cap-wise that we probably wouldn't have been able to do without that restructuring. So it was a very unselfish move on his part. It made him available for 2021. Beyond that, none of us know, and we'll just work with 2021 and see where it goes from there.
Kevin, in terms of extension for TJ, is it a little bit unique this year because there's anticipation of a unique cap jump the next 2 years? Typically, the bids to go where it will be. Does that make it more difficult projecting where it will be and how much we can afford, how much they might be without?
You know what? It's a different environment completely, and we talked about this a little bit in the off season. We knew we were going to be up against the cap last year. When the pandemic hit and the cap went down, we were severely up against the cap, and we had to make some obviously tough decisions. So moving forward, we think we know where the cap will go. We're hopeful that it does. And can we make certain players fit within that group? We always will do a deal based on what it does to us in 2021, and we try to project what it'll do to us 3 years down the road. And that's not unique, other than us not knowing what that new amount will be. We think we know where it is. We've been given a floor, but we don't know where it'll go. So we'll just try to do the best we can.
Kevin, how did Bill Nunn package you? What did he teach you?
Bill Nunn taught us on a daily basis just how to be a professional first and foremost. I mean, I'm sure the majority of you folks ran across Bill in some form or fashion, and you cherished every discussion with him because he could talk not only about football players, but he could talk about boxers, entertainers, baseball players, and tell you about how he rode Roberto Clemente to the airport after the 1960 World Series. So he could tell you stories that were impactful life lessons. From a football standpoint, Bill would always remind you of, let's just talk about the athleticism of this player. He said it's up to the coaches to take that athleticism and make them into a pro, because they all don't start out as Pro Bowlers or Hall of Famers. In Donnie Shell's case, it's a classic example of Bill spying raw talent as a college linebacker at South Carolina State and saying, hey, coach, I think this guy can be this type of player, which obviously going into the Hall of Fame he turned into. So Bill just reminded us daily of the basic athletic traits that Coach Knoll was looking for back then, and it was really a time where those two, along with Art Rooney Jr. and Dick Haley and Tom Modrak and Coach Knoll's staff, they put together the greatest teams in NFL history in that era and the greatest draft in NFL history.
Kevin, can you say as a matter of record what percentage of players are fully vaccinated?
No.
Okay, that's just your.
No, for real, I can't.
I understand.
Kevin, was the Nelson decision initially financial, and did you consider bringing it back in your circumstances?
Again, when we had to make some tough decisions. We had starters that we would have liked to have kept. We would have liked to have kept all of our starters and start over this year, but we weren't able to do that. We knew about it, and we had to make some changes as it went on. And as you go through a spring, and you're able to sign a player of your own on your own team, and then you say, if you do this, you may have to cut this player. And we had to do those back and forth. And really, our cap situation changed literally 3 weeks, coming out of the mini camp, when we decided to move on from David. And all of a sudden, we had cap room. And now we're looking at, wait a minute, this player is available. We might be able to sign him because he was looking for a certain number back in the spring. Now in the early summer, he might be more affordable. So we tried to make those decisions. It's an individual thing. Sometimes it's positional. Sometimes it's just a money issue, how you can afford certain players. And we're happy with the group that's come together to this point. When Melvin Ingram was still available and we could work it, we were happy to do that. When Trey Turner was affordable and workable, we were happy to do that. So we'll see what we got.
But there's
How
that.
and in what ways does the 17 game affect the way you construct the roster?
We don't know yet because we haven't played 17. I'm sure Coach will approach it, as he does, and he'll make adjustments to his practice regimen. But until you go through those 17 weeks, we're just making guesses as to how he'll structure his practices with his veteran players. Maybe he followed a certain pattern with 16 games in the placement of our bye, but now he'll follow a different pattern with the 17.
Is there a position, is there one position, as you sit here right now, that you feel really lacks depth?
No.
Or is it?
No, I wouldn't say we lack depth. I think we lack proven abilities. Do we have people who can play every position on this team? I feel yes, but they have to come out and prove it. Alex Highsmith has to prove that he could be a 16-game starter, and he'll be challenged by Melvin Ingram. Can Cam Sutton be an outside corner on 16 games? And, you look at those things, and you made decisions based on we think they can, but until those players do it, we don't know.
Kevin, in years past, you've got some deals done right before you started the regular season. Have you had any talks with PJ yet? Do you plan on having any talks with PJ about the extension?
Again, never talk about an individual's contract negotiations. We know who our free agents are. We know we want to keep our good players, and we'll see where it goes as the rest of the summer unfolds.
Kevin, I had a number of decisions this offseason where you did this that you haven't done before. You used the voidable contract years. You did free agent veterans more than them on a one-year deal. What goes into those conversations when you decide we're going to do something we haven't done before? And are there other things you feel like are sort of untouchable things that you won't do, like you haven't negotiated with contracts in the season, for example, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, and again, that's an organization decision based on Mr. Rooney's directive, on Art's directive. And we talk about trying to keep pace with what's going on in the league. You referenced the one-year deals that we hadn't done traditionally. We recognize that we probably had to under these circumstances, albeit the different rules, the circumstances from coming off the lower cap, and we made some adjustments there. I know we will hold on to the other, our own personal or individual rules for the organization of we won't negotiate with a player once the season starts. I never ever see that changing because our only focus should be on winning a Super Bowl.
Are there other things sort of in that realm, maybe like more guaranteed money or something like that you haven't done that you would consider doing?
Again, we'll always try to stay as current as possible by staying within our own beliefs. Our own beliefs will always override what's going on in the league.
You've
You
always,
talked about these incoming Hall of Famers. You sort of say that the characteristics steal, or they exhibit the characteristics of the Steelers. Why is TJ Watt that? Why is the personality-wise a guy that you want to lock up to this franchise?
TJ Watt has proven to be a very good defensive player. There's nothing you can add to what he's done on the field other than win a championship. I think the unique part of those 5 people going into that Hall of Fame this weekend, they're all Super Bowl champions. Some of them, in Bill Nunn's case, 6 times. Coach Cowher with 1, and Troy with 2, and Allen, with his 1, and Donnie with his 4. But they're all Super Bowl champions. I think every player. We've had a lot of great players come through here, and there's a lot of great players in the Hall of Fame. But the Super Bowl champion is the one thing that we want them all to experience at some point.
yeah,
And
we've
it
always
looked
liked
like during mini camp, you were spending extra time on the field talking to Dwayne Haskins afterward with Tomlin and Mr. Rooney. What are you learning about Dwayne Haskins as a person? I remember talking about wanting to know the person of Dwayne Haskins. What are you learning in that respect?
I mean, we try to learn all the new players as they come in. You'll see us spending more time with the individuals and learning about them. And, Melvin Ingram and Trey that we talked about. Chaz Green, the young offensive lineman we picked up. We'll learn about them constantly. We just want to know what they're about and what they're seeing, what they're feeling. And they come to us with a lot of questions and comments as well. But we do that with each player. We know the draft picks a little bit more because we spent more time with them. A guy like Dwayne, we didn't spend a lot of time with in pre-draft work because we knew we weren't going to get him. But you learn about him as you go through it.
Kevin, you always like to hold some money back under the cap going into the season. You have maybe a little more of a surplus right now, and something that could factor in, maybe making something happen.
What we always try to do is, unfortunately, we've averaged about 10 players per season going on reserve injured. And that's just the real number. So we always try to bank on that. But when you do that, you got to realize that a player in week 1 cost his full salary. In week 2, he only cost 16/17 of a salary. So that number goes down. You can't say you have to have that full number for each player throughout the season because week to week that number goes down. But we try to account for 10 players going on reserve injured at some point during the season.
Kevin mentioned knowing the draft picks pretty well. What initial impressions has Najee made on you?
Najee has been really, he's been more open than we anticipated. He's done some really good things. I mean, on the field, I think we're seeing things that we obviously like, but what he's doing off the field with his work with the homeless back home and just his engagement in the community here, back home, it's been very enlightening and it's been very encouraging. And we'll continue to help him grow, and we'll continue to learn about him. But so far, so good.
Vince suggested that the down last year, said, in December or whatnot. Did the staff notice that, and how can we prevent that happening?
I think we all, it kind of alludes to Aditi's question on the 17. We're going to be, the 17 games, we're going to be learning as we go. As we look back on last season, hopefully we don't get into that type of readjustment of games and trying to make ourselves available. We want to go in and we're playing this game, this date, this game, so on and so forth. But we'll have to adjust and learn. And each player, Coach has a great barometer on where his players are going into a season, coming out of an injury, be it one they entered the season with or one they suffered during the season, and he'll manage that time with his practice work. But I think that'll evolve week to week.
Kevin, I know they haven't put on pads yet, but can you allow yourself to get excited just a little bit about the showing?
I don't know if you heard Coach. Every time he makes a big catch, Coach says, "That's good. Can you block?" So, no. And Mike does that it's really kind of funny the way he does it. Yeah, but Pat has flashed some really good catching ability. And again, until we get out there and practice in pads, it's you don't get too excited. I never get excited in camp. I always talk about when the offense looks good, maybe your defense just isn't any good, and vice versa. So until we get into preseason games, I try not to get too excited, albeit acknowledging some special plays that maybe the young folks are making that we didn't anticipate.
Two more questions, two more.
College landscape, in terms of how you're able to scout, is that going to change for you guys this year? How's that going to work?
Yeah, last year, just a quick reminder, we couldn't go visit a college. We could go to games. At most colleges, we had to stay in the stands. We couldn't get on the field for the pregame. We couldn't get in the press boxes in a lot of places. Right now, the league has lifted our restrictions, but we're still subject to the school's restrictions. So what the scouts are in town right now, we're putting our schedules together. We're learning about, as the colleges report back, we're learning about their restrictions and what we have to abide by, and we'll, of course, adjust appropriately. We do anticipate being able to get on campus for practices, interaction as on a whatever basis they determine. I think games will be more, I shouldn't say more accessible. The games were accessible, but I think what will get back to what we hope is more of a normal procedure.
One more.
With the offensive line, I'm sure you went in the offseason knowing you had some changes, but there's more changes maybe than you could have envisioned. Is it a concern with so many changes?
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a transitional period. Once Marquise decided to retire, okay, that was one spot. We knew we were going to have trouble signing Al just based on where we were in our cap situation, and we had to make those types of decisions. Of course, David, giving us the retirement when he did, gave us another situation. But we felt, even back in the spring, we felt good about the group we had. Now, we didn't have Kendrick Green in the mix at that point. We didn't have a Trey Turner at that point. But we went into it saying, Chooks, when we scouted Chooks, we thought he'd be a better left tackle than right coming out of college. Last year, he lost the competition to Zach Banner at right tackle. Had they been competing for left tackle, my guess is Chooks would have beat him out. And that's not to take anything away from Zach. So I think Chooks can be a starting left tackle. Kevin Dotson, he's one of those young guys that have to prove that he can play 16 games efficiently as a starter. The center position is wide open. We have two veterans in JC and BJ Finney and JC Hassenauer, and of course Kendrick Green jumping into the mix. That'll be an interesting battle. The right guard, Trey Turner's a former Pro Bowl right guard. It's only 28 years old. Can he perform at that level this year for us? Time will tell. And Zach Banner, we're excited to see Zach back, at that right tackle spot because he earned it last year, and unfortunately he had the injury. So we knew it was going to be a little bit of a mix and match, but we were comfortable with the group we had, albeit having to add Trey after David. We moved on from David.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.